we will start with the program, and it is my pleasure to introduce Delvin to introduce our speaker. And Delvin was the person who brought Sharon into the club. So, Delvin, take it away, please.
There, back on. Thank you, Peter. For all of you gathered for the fellowship meeting this evening, I must say that it's my very great privilege and honor to introduce Sharon today, whom I usually call Blaker. So if I refer to her as Blaker, it's affectionate, not rude. I've known Sharon since 2005, when she joined the Chilliwack Rotary Club during the tail end of my year as president. And I can honestly say that she has become one of my longest and dearest friends in Rotary, and indeed outside of Rotary as well. She and her husband Phil are very dear to my wife and I, and we always enjoy their company and their hospitality when we're over at their place. I must say that Sharon has come from a very varied background to us as a Rotarian, and I'm sure we'll get a snippet of it tonight, but she's been everything from a goat herd all the way through to a teacher, and many points in between. She's very well traveled, she's educated, she's erudite, and she's a wonderful Rotarian. I won't say anything more, only to give her as much time as possible to give her classification talk, which we also know in some Rotary circles as a who's who. So thank you for giving me the privilege of introducing Sharon.
Awesome. Sharon, unmute yourself and share your screen and take it away.
All right. There we go. First off, thank you so much, Delvin, for those kind words. And Delvin was my mentor, I have to say, during my time with the Chilliwack Rotary Club, and as he mentioned, we've become very good friends. This is a compilation of my who's who from the Chilliwack Rotary Club. I think we had close to 190 members when I joined that club, so it was very exciting to get to know as many people as possible, many of which are friends now. So here we go, folks, my ride. So this is my mom at the age of 16, living up in Prince George. It was a lumber town back then, Prince George, British Columbia, which is in the central part of BC. And she had me when she was 19. And this is my dad, who actually was recruited to play NHL hockey, but he was young and his parents wouldn't sign the papers to allow him to go forward with that career. And he was 21 when I was born, and he met my mother through her brother. They were both working up there in this logging town. And my mother used to do their ironing, and she used to put their lunches together, and they started dating. So I was born in 1952, and there's Mr. PG, who still stands at the information center up in Prince George. It's a very old picture, this one. In fact, I think that's us when we were small there with my dad. There's me. I was the firstborn of 4 children. And my sister Karen, who passed away about a year after this picture was taken, complications of MS. And the reason we're sharing a bath is because she lost the use of a lot of her limbs. And I'm actually holding her up so she didn't go under the water. And she spent her last Christmas with us, and we really enjoyed having her. We were only 11 months apart. And this is my brother Jerry, who's next in line. And he is a very, very well-known artist locally. And he was an art teacher for many years and also taught at a couple of the colleges in Vancouver. Works in all kinds of medium. And I'm graced to have a few of his art pieces in our home. And then my baby brother, who was born when I was 15, He's going to be 50 this year. Oh my God, my baby brother. And this is him with his son. And he lives in Prince George still. And he originally was still living in our family home for quite a few years. And my little nephew. This is my partner, Phil. 24 years, October the 2nd, and my best friend. And we blended a family of 2 daughters each. And Phil has a wonderful sense of humor, thank goodness, because 4 daughters from the age of 6 to 14 living in the house 100% of the times. He used to call it Phil's house of hormones at times when all the doors were slamming upstairs. And there were disagreements about hair products and clothing. These are our daughters. This is a few years, this is before grandchildren. So the 2 on your left are Phil's daughters. Claire currently is an IT manager for a medical company, Western Canada IT manager. Jessica, who is 40 this year, so we know we're getting older when our daughters reach these milestone birthdays. She is a GP up in the Yukon, where my husband is from, and still has a lot of family there, along with her husband. So 1 grandson here, grandson and a granddaughter here, and this is my youngest, Jen, who lives here in Chilliwack, and she just had her 2nd child. She's finishing up her speech pathology master's, and she just had a 2nd child, so she has a 7-year-old and a 2-week-old. And this is my eldest daughter, Sarah, who lives in Kelowna, along with Claire. They both live in Kelowna, and she has no children, and she just sold her baby. She owned a retail clothing boutique, and that was her baby. So that's the immediate family. I graduated from Prince George High School in 1970 with a number of awards and scholarships to get me into university, University of Victoria, which I couldn't have afforded to go to otherwise. My parents did not have a lot of money. Unfortunately, I didn't get any degrees in school, but I did meet a husband there. And we opened a hobby farm in Agassiz, British Columbia, and it was just over 5 acres. And when Delwyn talked about a goat herd, that's exactly what I was, along with many other things. We had rabbits and ducks and goats, and I boarded horses, and I had 2 horses of my own, and I made cheese and yogurt and sold milk when it was legal to do that, before it got all, licensed, and made ice cream and donated rounds of cheese to different fundraisers, and just enjoyed my life thoroughly on the farm. And that's my little beagle, a purebred beagle that I used to sell her puppies as well. There is me with my goats. And this is just before I'm going to have my first child, 1980. I had Sarah in 1982. And there she is. She was born 1 month early in Tofino, BC. We were there on holidays, and she decided to come along with us. And there's our other little daughter, my other little daughter, Jennifer, born 3 years later on Good Friday. And there is when we got married 24 years ago, our blended family. And Phil with all these wonderful women in his life. Lucky guy. I love books, and that was one of the reasons I really was attracted to the Chilliwack Rotary Club. They have a book sale there that's in its 33rd year, and in fact I still volunteer for it, and I was there Monday, and I chaired that book sale. It's their major fundraiser, and we usually fundraise between 65 and 75,000. But the 1 year I was chairing it, we netted over 82,000, and that has never been beat yet. So I just love books, and I love anything to do with literacy, and enjoy the fact that we have the Dolly Parton Imagination Library in the RE Club. I think that's great. Lots of international students. These two are from the school district, but I've had a lot from Rotary, in the double digits, and we've had students in our house for 22 years, ever since our eldest daughter left home. And they've ranged from 3 weeks to 4 years, going home in the summer holidays. and everything from as young as 11 to as old as 19. I'm a gardener, an avid gardener. We have 1/3 of an acre, and my daughters say they're going to be planting a lavender and rosemary and thyme around my tombstone. I love gardening. I love to be outside, and that's my meditation place, my go-to place for relaxation and as a stress reliever. 50 years in 2002, and this year I celebrated 65. This was a wonderful woman in my life who lived to be 103 years old, and Jean Scott, and she won a lot of national awards and some honorary degrees. And she was a woman that I chose to pattern myself after. A wonderful woman. She looked outward all the time and had a lot of causes that she championed. And and she was just a wonderful person in my life. And I miss her dearly. Dogs and animals. We have rescued animals in our home for probably 20 plus years. Well, since I've known Phil. And this was one of our last dogs who made the cover of a number of pamphlets, and she was a delightful animal. And now we have a cat and dog in our home that we have rescued as well. Travel. We love to travel, as Delwyn mentioned, and we've been not only all over Canada, but South America, through the States, Europe, Asia. Haven't made it down under yet, but hope to do that. And I haven't been to Africa. My dream, one of my wishes, is to hit all the continents before I leave this world. Tai Chi, I was very involved in Tai Chi until I had to have back surgery. It'll be 7 years in November that I've had my back surgery. But I was the first instructor here in Chilliwack, and I was on the Pacific Region board. And we did Tai Chi probably daily. And went and traveled to a lot of workshops across Canada and in the United States as well. So careers in volunteering, as Delwyn says, I'm a real mixed bag. I've done everything over the years, and probably the last 20-some years I've been a contractor. So before that, I was a paralegal. I worked in a garden center. I worked planting trees. I worked for ICBC as an adjuster. I was a contractor with Chilliwack Restorative Justice, which I'm going to talk about in more detail. And I bought Operation Red Nose into Chilliwack as a fundraiser for that organization as well. I was also the executive director for Chilliwack Elder College, which is affiliated with our university here. And I was a trainer with the RCMP in a contract, on a contract basis. And I don't have all the volunteer organizations that I was involved with posted here. But I also, Phil and I met through the Ann Davis Transition House, which is a safe home for abused women and children, and that's how we met. And in lieu of wedding gifts, we asked that donations be made to the Transition House. We met on a fundraising walk. So I was involved with them, and I did a lot of work on their operations and fundraising. I seem to get into this fundraising mode when I'm with organizations. I'm not sure why. Probably because I'm not afraid of people saying no to me. So. In 2005, I was honored by the RCMP in E Division, and E Division encompasses all of British Columbia. And the RCMP in E Division is 1/3 of the population of the national RCMP. So 1/3 of the members are in E Division. And they honored me with a volunteer award for my work in restorative justice, because my daughters used to call me a paid volunteer when I worked there. The salary wasn't anything to write home about. And I also did a few other volunteer stints with them, including Citizens on Patrol and things like that. So it was a provincial award, and there were 4 of us awarded this award down in Vancouver, and it was really nice to be recognized for the work done. Restorative justice. Now, this was an interesting trip that spanned about from 1998. And I was still doing training up until a year ago, off and on, and I still am involved in the local program. and as a trainer, and also to mentor new facilitators and mentor staff. So I was recognized by the Canada Corrections for my work in restorative justice in Toronto, and I was up in Fort St. John and when their program was recognized, and I did a lot of work with that program to get it up and running. What you're seeing at the bottom of the screen are some of my modes of transport getting to some of these locations. The one at the bottom with showing the boat, I was in a small motorboat with the chief of the band at Kingham Inlet, which has 100 people involved in their community. And I landed on a float plane on the ocean with a, got out in a ramp that was moving and climbed into this boat with my boots on, and away we went on a 15-minute ride up the river to this small village which has no electricity, runs on generators, and it's very, very peaceful to be there in the evening. There's no street lights, there's no car traffic. And when I was leaving on one of my trips up there, because I went up to help them start their program, I was told that I had to wait for the ATV to take me down to the beach because there was a cougar roaming around the village, and not to let me walk down to the beach by myself. So that's how I would get up to that location. And there were a few locations that were quite tricky to get into. One of the other modes of travel was the RCMP jet, and they're housed in Prince George and Vancouver, and I would be one of maybe 6 or so travelers, and they'd pop down, let you off, and then away they'd go again. And so I would go into some of these communities, very small communities, by jet as well, if they could get in there. And the other way, of course, would be in a vehicle, a four-wheel drive sometimes. So very interesting. I had the privilege to travel to many, many communities throughout the province and into northern Alberta, and also up into the Yukon to work with them as well. So these are some of the communities that I was involved with over the years, and many of them I went back more than one time. So what you're seeing under the Chehalis picture is a circle. So what I trained community members, educators, police, and any volunteers that they had in their community that wanted to be trained on how to facilitate a restorative circle involving people that were harmed and people who did the harm and their supporters, family members and people there to support them. And the role of the facilitator is to be neutral, but you're also there to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak and that the conversation is respectful. And the idea is to tell the stories the first couple of rounds, and then to go around again, and starting with the person who's been harmed or the victim, ask them what they need to right the harms that have been done to them. And then there's another round or two of discussion. Sometimes this takes longer than the storytelling. And then you come up with an agreement that everyone has to become comfortable with. It's all by consensus. If the person that's done the harm is a youth, they have to be comfortable as well with whatever the resolution is. So here, what you're seeing in the Chehalis picture is them role-playing. So we have a number of scenarios based on actual cases, and most of our referrals would come from community RCMP schools, and we would act as their agent in order to resolve these issues. Everyone had to agree to participate. There was no coercion involved. If they didn't agree to participate, there was another venue chosen or another avenue, often the courts. So in other words, they had to agree, the people that were harmed had to agree to be there, and so we're role-playing there. And these trainings would take 3 days. I could be up there in a community for as long as a week if I was helping them set up a program or helping them liaise with their RCMP detachment or community members or youth workers. Sometimes I would be on television, interviewed by newspapers, anything to get the restorative word out there, I was willing to do. Kinkham Inlet, I was honored to be up there a few times, and there's no hotels, no B&Bs, so I would be invited to stay with an elder, and sometimes we'd sit up till the wee hours of the morning, and she would be sharing me some of the stories and some of the wisdom. What they're doing here is they're doing something that some of these elders hadn't witnessed since they were children. It was a meal, but they had buried in the coals a lot of their indigenous food that they can get there, like a type of rice out of the river and different indigenous things. And we had a wonderful potlatch that night, along with some dancing and traditional masks, and it was absolutely phenomenal. I just was so honored to be there. Whoop. And here's a police officer participating, one of 4. Usually if in a small community, they would ask all the members to be trained. And then I went into Bella Coola, and that was another interesting ride in there. So that's just 4 of the places I've been in. I've been in, the smallest has been Kinkham Inlet, 100 people. And the largest has been Richmond, British Columbia, Vancouver, North Vancouver, and those kinds of metropolitan areas. Rotary has been a wonderful part of my life, and I just love Rotary. Here's me at a book sale. I was president during the Light Up Rotary year. Oops, don't know why I can't make that go higher. But, and, oh, we're going way too fast here. Sorry, folks. So really enjoyed my year as president. Gave me an opportunity to introduce a few new things and to just get engaged in Rotary at a different level and in a different way, and get some phenomenal leadership training also. One of the things that I brought in, and what we did was, we have 3 Rotary clubs in Chilliwack, and they had never really done a lot together. And so we had the 3 Rotary clubs get together and put on a fashion show, Runway for Rotary. And you can see Undine is the sponsor that year, one of our sponsors for this Runway for Rotary. And it was a lot of fun, and they raised a lot of money, and it was split between the 3 Rotary clubs. So something that was initiated by myself during the 1 year. Every Christmas, they have a Christmas concert at the Rotary Club of Chilliwack, and I participated in that, doing a skit. There's my Rotary year, my lovely secretary. We also kind of partnered with an elementary school, and we feed them breakfast. So we ended up taking our Rotary meeting to Central School, the elementary school, and that's us setting up there, and with the principal, and the children got up and told us about the benefits of having breakfast, hot breakfast at the school, and they played some music for us and entertained us. This is the 3 Rotary presidents at that time, with our mayor and the chair of our Rotary trails. And we had just opened up a new trail. And so I was very pleased in my year that there were 2 new sections of the trail opened up. So that was a really rewarding part of my presidential year as well. Something else I'm involved in, and it's a mentorship program to empower Commonwealth young women. And so this young lady is I'm her mentor. She's my mentee, and there's about 40 of them, and they're young women from countries who don't have the opportunity to have a lot of mentoring or support. And so this is something that I'm doing with her, and I really, really enjoy it. We meet once a month via Skype, and she has to set 3 goals, one of which was conflict resolution, which was why I was matched with her. And the other one was organizational skills, which Delwyn can tell you I'm very good at. So, yes, I'm enjoying my relationship with her. Unfortunately, their island was hit with Hurricane Maria, was it? Mm-hmm. And they lost 34 lives there, and part of their island washed away. So I'm just trying to, I have connected with her, and her family, and she as well. But they're very busy trying to get themselves back on track there. But something I'm really enjoying, I love youth. That's another reason I got involved in Rotary, was the youth exchange program. And I've been a counselor, inbound, outbound, and as I said, we've hosted a number of youth in our home. So this is our family today. Just last summer, Phil retired, and we had all the monkeys home. And so 4 grandchildren here, and then this is the newest little peanut here. So this is them and their family units. This is the one who's just had the second child here. They have a grand pug. They don't have any children. So I do look after the grand pug, Zoe, and I'll tell you, she's a lot more work than the children. So, and of course, there's my husband. He's always up for the children to do anything to him. He's been found with wearing lipstick, performing a wedding with one of the granddaughters. He was the prince, she was the princess, and he's been fair game for most things. So he's got a great sense of humor that way. And that's it, folks. So anybody that doesn't know anything about restorative justice, I'd be more than willing to talk to you about that. And now I have to figure out how to unshare the screen. There we go. There we go. Perfect. So I'd be more than willing to answer any questions about restorative practices. It is worldwide, and it is age old. And I think Peter is going to moderate this part of it if anybody has any questions. Is that correct, Peter?
Sharon, thank you very, very much for your presentations. Awesome. And the process that we're going to try is you can raise your hand, but not physically. You can raise your hand virtually by going into the participants. And like I said, at the bottom, click on participants, you see everybody. And when your name is there, you see your name, there is an option to raise your hand. If you have a question, raise your hand, and then I will give you, you unmute yourself and give you the floor. So, anybody has a question for Sharon?
So I would like to make one more comment. I'd like Undine to come in the picture. Undine was one of my first volunteers, and I was managing up to 120 volunteers at times, but she took on the role of mentoring. Anytime we had a client go through and have an agreement put into place, they were matched up with a volunteer called a mentor. And their role was to ensure that the agreement got met, and the young person was come out of it in a very positive way, and sometimes point them in the right direction, and sometimes support the family. So I don't know if Undine wants to say anything about that or not.
It's that program, Restorative Justice, is a wonderful program. I started it because of my daughter going through hard times, and at the time that I met Sharon, I was ready to totally disown her. And Sharon,
not me,
not Sharon, my daughter. And Sharon really helped me to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's how we started our friendship and relationship. So the Restorative Justice Program, I can't say enough about it. It's a wonderful program that helps people who have gone astray, to just give them the nudge that they sometimes need. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Undine. Lou Spitzeri, sorry, you have a question.
Yeah, my question for Sharon is, I noticed that many of the communities were Aboriginal or Native communities out in British Columbia. And having just returned from British Columbia, I got quite an interesting insight into how the natives, the Haida, particularly, and the Crickets and the Taktakawak and a whole number of other indigenous folks out in the West how obviously they were misplaced and injured by the discovery of the West by Vancouver and all the folks that really displaced those people from where they had been living for the past 5,000 years. And I'm curious if your restorative justice, is that dealing with the injustices that were fostered onto or onto the natives by our taking over their lands and that kind of thing? Is that what you're doing?
Well, what I'm going in to do the restorative practices and the philosophy behind restorative justice comes from Aboriginal communities, both down under with the Maoris in New Zealand and in our First Nations. And a lot of them had lost some of those traditions. Like you saw the potlatch, which they hadn't done since the elders were young. Same with restorative practices. So we had the opportunity through the RCMP at no cost to any of these communities to go in and provide this training. And I used to say to them, I hope when I leave here and come back in 3 years, I don't recognize this model I've just shared with you. I hope that you've made it your own, whatever that looks like. And then they took these models and they ran with them. And some of the communities are doing absolutely amazing things, building bridges between the fisheries department, conservation, the local police, their own members. And yes, this has been used actually in Europe and South Africa and different places for reconciliation and to do a lot of healing for that. So it's being used in the workplace to do with workplace harm. Anywhere where there's harm, you can take this basic model and you can adjust it and revise it to suit your needs, basically. So I would go in and I would give them a template, for lack of a better word, and they could take that template and make it their own. And then I might come in and I might tweak it, or we might work together on it, that kind of thing. I was showing you some of the most unusual places I've been in, but of course I've been in traditional places. The hardest places to set up this kind of program are the large communities, because they can't get the volunteers. When you're in a small community and you don't have a lot of services, you grab onto anything that comes into your community and you take it and you run with it. And Kinkham Inlet, for instance, if there's an incident there, like an assault or some kind of school incident or anything like that, they have to wait for the boat to come across the channel from the island with the RCMP member in it. So then they said, well, we've got to find a way to resolve these issues in our own community ourselves. But yes, they have picked up a lot of the old traditions now, and they're inserting them into this restorative model. They're also getting a lot of funding from the federal government for their justice programs now, which doesn't just only include restorative practices, but includes justice workers in the court system, probation officers, their own in-house counseling services, anything to do with justice. So they're getting the full package funding now to be able to do a lot of stuff in their own communities. So it's great to go back after a few years and to see the changes and them incorporating their age-old traditions and their original traditions into what we've offered them. I don't know if that answers your question, Lou, or not.
Somewhat.
Somewhat. I can't answer it totally because I'm I don't know exactly what's going on today. I've been retired for a few years, so.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, all I can say is welcome. You seem like a wonderful addition to our e-club. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Lou.
Delvin, you have a question?
Yes, a far more frivolous one.
Oh.
Laker, you really owe it to the rest of us to show us your high school graduation picture again.
Oh.
That hairstyle needs to be seen again.
That hairstyle took 5 hours to do, believe me.
I have to tell you, Delvin, we had a preview, Ellie and I, because I got a copy in case there are, technical issues. So I walked through her presentation, and that one stands out immediately. Awesome picture. you can
Well,
see it again sometime in the future on very unexpected moments. I
Oh,
can
no.
assure you,
Oh,
Sharon.
If there's
no.
any reason for you to grow your hair out, is to have a redux of that hairstyle again.
It's never going to happen, Delwyn. I'm sorry. It was down the middle of my back. Don't forget, that was 1970. We're talking the hippie era, right?
that was the dippity-doo era.
Dippity-doo. And the hippies, yes.
Other question I have for you, Sharon, is on the mentoring program in the Caribbean, and both Jean-Michel and I are involved with that also.
Yes, you
and
are.
I have my mentee is in Jamaica, and here in Dominican Republic, we've been basically not hurt very much by the hurricane. So, which island is yours on? I missed
Is it Dominique? Is that an island?
Dominica.
Dominica, yes.
Dominica, one of the first ones that got hit by Irma.
Yes. I didn't get, miss the first hurricane, missed them. It was the second one.
Okay.
Yeah. Was it Maria? Second one?
Well, I thought it was Irma was the first one that hit them. But
no,
anyway,
they missed, the first one missed them. It was the second one.
I see. Okay.
Dominica, yeah. And she's a youth ambassador for Dominica. She's very involved in her community, and she was supposed to go to Jamaica for some international conference when the hurricanes hit. So never got off the island. Yeah, she's 27, very lovely woman. She just got a full scholarship to go to university.
Wow.
She had to leave school at the age of 17 and had a child who she's raising, and along with two of her siblings. And she's doing all this work, and now she started university full time. I really admire her. So I'm hoping she can get back on track for sure.
Any further questions for Sharon? Good. Sharon, again.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Noberto.
Nosberto.
Well, here in Dominican Republic, they don't say any S's.
Yeah, I know. I was being Noberto. But Sharon, nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me try to explain because my English is not so well yet. But this program, the Restoring Fraud and Justice, is it done or performed instead of the, let's say, the traditional justice system?
Yes.
To replace it due to distance to courts or because the place is so difficult to reach? Is it the same thing? What is it based on?
Okay, it is another stream. So it's pre-charge. The RCMP members, when they send it to us, they haven't sent any charges through to the court system. Now, sometimes if they don't do what they're supposed to do, it will go through the court system. But restorative practices can be held pre-charge. They can go to court, and the judge can say, no, before I sentence you, I want a circle. I want you to sit down with the person you've harmed and all the family members, and then bring that recommendation. I was involved in a circle like that, an arson fire where 3 people barely got out with their lives. And the judge said, I want this to go back to the community. It was a small community. And I want you to come back with recommendations for sentencing. You also have something similar even when people are incarcerated and in jail. You can go in and you can have circles. Those take a lot more preparation. We never have a circle until we interview all the parties that are going to be sitting in that circle. There's a lot of preparation. So we don't just sit down. They go in there knowing what to expect, knowing what their role is, and we interview every single person. It takes quite a bit. It takes a lot of hours and a lot of work, because then after the agreement or whatever is put into place, then you're still with those families until that is all satisfied. But we're in the school system now, so instead of a disciplinary hearing or whatever in the school system, it comes to restorative practices, and whatever resolution is agreed in that circle, the school district accepts it. And the same with the police, they accept whatever. So if we're sitting in a circle and I apologize to you and you say that's all I need, I don't need anything else, then that's the end of it. And that is recognized by the justice system and the other players involved as well. But if you're a store owner, if you're a store owner and you're robbed, you can also call up and say, hey, I want to meet these young kids. I'm not going to put charges through,
Okay.
but I want to meet them and I want to go in a circle with them. So it can be used in many, many different applications in many venues for sure.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting because in my country, in Guatemala, we have many problems with the, I would say, traditional system of justice because we have so many lack of resources that the courts doesn't reach many people in the country. So maybe this kind of programs will help in Guatemala.
Would help, yeah, for sure.
You go to Guatemala, Sharon?
Yeah.
Anytime.
Well, I've been to Thailand and I talked to their Minister of Justice there, and I was in South America and Brazil, and they have a young fellow from Britain who goes into the favelas there and sits down there with all the people, the gang leaders and stuff like that. I think he's taken his life into his hands, but he's been doing it for quite a few years, and just to resolve some of the hurt and some of the issues, It's just people talking to people in a safe, respectful manner, really, at the end of the day. And you're there just as a neutral party to facilitate that. So you have to know a lot about emotions and people and different personality styles, and yeah, there's a lot to it.
Okay, one more question. Anybody?
John Kay.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, Sharon, is this program more developed in Canada than it is in the U.S.?
No, actually, the godfather of we call him the godfather of restorative justice, Dr. Howard Zare. He's out of the New England states, and they actually that there in California actually were probably the forerunners in North America, and it slowly came up. Our program started through the RCMP by an RCMP member being seconded to a place in New South Wales, Australia. And he saw it in their system with youth. It was actually law down there. It was called family group conferencing. And he brought it back to Canada from Australia, believe it or not. But no, the US is quite developed. And again, there's pockets of it where it's very prevalent, and then other places where it's not. Alberta is very well developed. They actually have the Solicitor General's backing and funding. In BC, unfortunately, we have to pretty well find our own funding. So, and usually our city here in Chilliwack provides us enough funding to staff one staff person here. And the rest is all
I haven't heard of it very much down here, and we certainly need it.
I hear that wherever I go, John. Yes, I know. We need to keep people talking to each other, even especially youth, especially in this day of texting and social media. Like, we're doing a lot of things about social media incidents now. Cyberbullying and all this, we're getting a lot of cases around that, and then these young people have to come and sit across from each other. It's very interesting. A lot of them have, it's hard for them to talk to each other face to face because they're getting to the point where they're not used to it anymore. So. And
without a cell phone in their hand, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Sharon, again, thank you. Ellie, would you mind closing the meeting and maybe say a last few words to Sharon?
Yes, Sharon, it's from the beginning has been a pleasure to work with you on the membership committee. And I only knew little bits and pieces about you, but I have a lot of respect for all the work that you do. And yeah, thank you so much. So I hope that those that have not yet done their classification talk, like me. This is an inspiration to, wow, this is interesting, how we get to know our members better. So thank you, and thank you all for joining us. We're looking forward to the November one, which will be, there will be a focus on foundation or polio, I believe. Thank you all for joining us.